Welcome, writers, game masters, and creatives to the World Builders Tavern! Today we are talking about The Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom. Be warned, there will be spoilers. I'm Allison, your friendly barkeep, while Emma is away, along with Christiana.
Hi.
And our special guest for this episode, Jeni Chappelle. Welcome!
Thank you so much. I'm very excited.
I'm so excited you're here. Jeni is an independent book editor, a co-founder and editor for Twitter pitch event Revise and Resub, and co-host of the Indie Chicks and Story Chat Radio podcasts. I've listened to Story Chat Radio, and it is a really fun deep dive into the story structure of movies. And Jeni and her co-host Carly, another editor, give super helpful advice for writers. So go check that out once you're done listening to this episode. I'm a big fan of your podcast, Jeni.
Thank you so much. I think we have a little bit of overlap in kind of how we approach talking about stories. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, it was really neat to find you because I'm like, oh, they do really similar stuff to our podcast. So that's helpful for listeners. If you like our podcast, you'll probably like theirs too. So we're diving into Tears of the Kingdom, which is an open world action-adventure video game. It's the 20th game, I had to look this up, in the Legend of Zelda franchise. Yeah.
Wow.
I'm a big Legend of Zelda fan, and I wasn't sure how many there were. So it's the 20th. Yeah. It's the sequel to Breath of the Wild. The story begins with Link and Zelda discovering a mummified Ganondorf underneath Hyrule Castle. Zelda disappears, and the Master Sword is shattered. Instant tension, stakes! And then the player, as Link, searches for Zelda and a way to stop Ganondorf's dastardly plans for the kingdom.
I feel like that's a pretty classic Legend of Zelda thing. It's always Ganondorf.
Yes.
He's always up to no good.
It's not really always, but for the majority of the games, he is the villain, and it's wonderful. So... okay, you guys, give me your impressions of this game.
Well, I'm obsessed with it. I shared on Twitter that I have a full-time job and I'm trying to complete a master's degree and I should be working on my thesis and work stuff. And instead in like the first week, played like 90 hours of Tears of the Kingdom and ignored all of my responsibilities. And in my head, I wasn't even playing that much. I was like, yeah, and I work and I do a couple things and then I like play Zelda until I go to bed. And I didn't realize like how much I had sunk into it because it's just that beautiful of a world, you know, like you get so lost in it.
Yeah. Jeni, how about you?
Yeah. So I typically like to play video games while I'm listening to audiobooks.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have ADHD and I can't just do one thing at a time ever. So I have been, I've been listening to various books as I've been playing this. So I kind of do the same thing. I get sucked in and I'm like, before I know it, you know, I've been playing for hours and hours and hours. And, you know, I'm like halfway through the audiobook. So I've been getting a lot of reading in. That's been nice too. It's been really cool so Breath of the Wild was not my first Zelda game, but probably the one I've played the most.
Mm.
Yeah. And so getting to not just come back to Legend of Zelda and not just Hyrule, but the same version of Hyrule and seeing like not just those like, so there's always like, you know, the same races that carry over, like, you know, the Zora and the Gorons and, you know, those are in a lot of the games. But being able to come back and there's like the same towns and a lot of the same characters and the animation looks the same. And all of that has just been really cool. And so then on top of that, they've like added all this other cool new stuff. So it's just, I didn't know if they could actually make it as good as Breath of the Wild. And like leading up to it, I had seen some people saying we think it might actually be better. And I was like, no way.
No way.
It might be. It might be.
It's at least as good.
It is.
If not better.
I had the same thoughts. Breath of the Wild is the first Zelda game that I actually played like through start to finish kind of thing, I would say. I've played like a lot of like Ocarina of Time and things like that, but I feel like I never got super sucked into it. But with Breath of the Wild, that was another one where it was very, mind you, it was also, I got it on like Boxing Day. in Winnipeg when it's like minus 50 and horrible. So like, what else are you going to do with your life for the next month other than like roam around this beautiful place? And when I knew it was taking place in the same world, I was like, how are they going to make it different enough for it to be new and exciting? But they did. They found a way with the Sky Islands and with the underground area and everything like that. Like, they did a really good job.
It's a really unusual thing for Zelda to do because normally the games are just completely different.
Yeah.
Right.
Worlds or universes from each other. The closest comparison I can make is Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask.
Right.
Yeah. Which Majora's Mask doesn't take place in Hyrule, but it's sort of like this dream alternate version.
Yeah.
And then Breath of the Wild is also very different from any of the past Zelda games because it's open world. So we should talk about open world building. I want to talk about how this franchise, these two games in particular, make you feel so immersed in this world of Hyrule. Like you become, at least I did, become invested in like its inhabitants and all the people you meet, and it feels three-dimensional and real. And how do the writers manage this?
Yeah. And I think part of the challenge of that too is so I think that's why I never got super into other Zelda games, is because I'm a big open world person. I like to kind of do things at my own pace, and like I'm usually the kind of person who like will neglect any of the main story until I'm like as beefy as I possibly can be, and then I just tear through it and I'm like, okay, we're done. So it's a challenge to do that when you know that the information and the stories and things like that, like you can't have them entirely dependent on each other. They have to connect and make sense, but the fact that you're experiencing the story in a non-linear way is kind of like default part of an open world. And I think that's so challenging to do well, but
I actually don't. Or in the past, I haven't liked open world games for that reason.
Oh, really?
I don't like it. I like having a linear path that I follow. And so I was a little skeptical when I got Breath of the Wild because I'm like, oh, I'll play it because it's Zelda. And then I ended up really liking it, even though I don't normally like open world games. What about you, Jenny?
So Breath of the Wild was my second foray into open world games. My first was Skyrim, which I played on my PS5 with like all the cheats I could get, because I had this conversation with my husband who, grew up a gamer, still has his original Nintendo, and like all of the consoles he's had since then, like a little museum in here. And so I was like, I would love to play one of those games, but I know I'm not going to if I go and like, so Skyrim basically opens with like you go and fight a dragon.
Right.
And I'm like, I know I'm not going to keep playing it if I just die right away. Like that's just not going to happen because my real life is frustrating enough. Like I don't want to be frustrated playing a game. I don't find that enjoyable, so that kept me away from gaming for a long time. So I had played Ocarina of Time, Skyward Sword, Majora's Mask, and enjoyed all of those. They were very linear. Yeah. And it wasn't something I had really thought about until I played Breath of the Wild as this combination of, Legend of Zelda, which had always been very linear, and then, an open world game. But yeah, I'm definitely more of an open world player, as long as it's the right game. Because
same.
Some of the more difficult games that are intended to be very challenging, I just don't even want to touch.
Yes. No, I'm glad you brought that up because I feel like I constantly have to defend myself with that too, where I'm like, my friends are like, "Oh, play this with us," and I'm like, my life is already stressful.
Yeah.
I don't need to stress myself out more. I want to play a video game because and have fun and experience a story and feel like I'm doing a good job. I don't want to, if I die every 5 seconds, it's not fun for me, kind of thing.
Yes.
I like difficult video games, but I also have to be in the right mood. Like I love Hollow Knight, which is really hard. And it's often like dying over and over and over again. But you have to be in like the right headspace for that.
Yeah.
But I did really appreciate that there was some linear choices in Tears of the Kingdom if you wanted. Like it kind of directed you to a certain space first and then another one, and I'm like, well, I like that, I'm gonna follow this path. Did you too follow that, or did you do things out of order?
So when I played Breath of the Wild, it was way after everyone else had played it, and like everyone else in the world, but specifically my husband and my son. So my son's an adult. When he turned 18, on his 18th birthday, he got a Triforce tattoo. Nice. This is the level of respect and love for Legend of Zelda in our home. So I had already seen a lot of Breath of the Wild. So when I played that, I never even really, like, I never beat the final boss in that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was just so much doing side quests and finding armor and, you know, finding all the cool little things in the world and stuff like that. So when I started playing Tears of the Kingdom, I already knew that was kind of how I like to play. Whereas I didn't really know that with Breath of the Wild. So I went into the beginning of Tears of the Kingdom with the idea of like, I need to get to a certain level of like I need a certain number of hearts and a certain amount of stamina and, you know, a certain amount of armor, and I need to find the good weapons and kind of figure out the new mechanics of the game and get all of the stuff for the like the pad. I can't think of what it's called now. I want to call it the Sheikah Slate, but that's not
Pura pad.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. So, you know, get all of the pieces of that put together. Yeah. And I kind of did that while I filled out the first map. Mm-hmm. So like kind of went around and hit all of the towers so I could fill out the main map of Hyrule. And then by that point I had, you know, reached a level where I could start kind of doing a little more of the actual game. So that's worked out really well for me. Mm-hmm. I've reached, like I've gotten all the 4 stages now.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at. So now I'm like, okay, well, time for me to go around and get some more hearts and do some more shrines.
Exactly, right? You got to intersperse it.
Yeah. So I will like, oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, I'll go through and like do a whole bunch of side quests until that gets boring. And then I'll do like a whole bunch of shrines until that gets boring. Yeah. And then I'll do some main quest. And I just kind of like rotate, switch through like that. Yes.
I was just going to say, I think you generally have the exact same approach in most open world games where it's like, first, my main concern is filling out the map because I get frustrated when it's like, oh, it's over in this town. And I'm like, where is it? Where's that town? I can't see it on the map. Like I immediately get kind of annoyed. So it's like, that's always my first goal. It's like, so in Breath of the Wild and with Tears of the Kingdom, it was like, I need to go to every tower. I need to get that set up so that way I can at least see where I'm going. And then I kind of start planning from there.
So I found it really interesting that this was the first Zelda game that I felt really invested in the story. Like I don't play Zelda games for the story. That's just not what you play them for. I play them for like the visuals and the cool world and the fun gameplay and puzzles. But I really liked what they did with the story, and they somehow managed to do it in this non-linear way. Yes. Where you got pieces out of order. Yeah. And although it didn't always work because like I had seen all the memories, and so I realized that I learned that, spoiler warning, Zelda is a dragon early on, but then Link had conversations with people where I'm like, you would say this at this point that you know this thing and you're not saying it because the game doesn't know that you've necessarily gotten that information yet.
I did have a couple moments like that too, where like I think we were talking to someone and they were like hinting that Zelda's a dragon or something, and I was like, old news, next.
Yeah, I know, right?
Figure that out.
Well, if you think about it from like a storytelling aspect, right? Like we never hear what Link says. We never know exactly what he tells anybody else. Yeah. So there's always this element of kind of, you know, when you're reading a book and characters don't necessarily know what the other one knows and what they don't know, like those kinds of things. So I think there's kind of a storytelling basis for this idea of like, you know, they don't know what he knows. They don't necessarily, both in terms of they don't have the same knowledge, but also, they're going to be talking in a way based on sort of general knowledge, unless he tells them otherwise. And presumably Link is holding these cards kind of close to his chest and only telling like his most trusted advisors. Because I would think that, Zelda being a dragon wouldn't be something they would just want everybody knowing.
Yeah, that would cause
really
mass
good.
panic.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
Guess what, guys? Our princess has turned into a dragon. Don't worry. We're going to start it out.
It's fine. Things are fine.
That's a very, like, Legend of Zelda trope, too, though. Like, whatever the thing is, that's what Zelda is involved with,
Yeah.
So even before I got to that point, like, it didn't surprise me. That wasn't like a big reveal to me.
Yeah.
Because it's just so in line with the other kind of storylines that they've done.
Yeah. And it's in line with her character, too. Like,
it is.
I found it like an emotional moment when we figured out, and then you have to go and try and get the Master Sword out of her head, which is extra sad for some reason. Like, I'm so sorry, baby. But it also, I was like, this just makes sense to me. Like, this is something she would do. She's like so, like, truly good as a character.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that she would make that decision. And like, yeah, you're right. I think when I saw it, I was like, oh, that's so sad. I'm not at all surprised, but it's so sad.
So I really wanted her to stay a dragon. I'm sorry, spoilers for Jenny, who hasn't finished it, but she does not. They save her kind of with a Deus Ex Machina type thing.
Yeah.
With magic that you didn't know would work that way. Even though they said previously, oh, if you do that, if you make this sacrifice, there's no going back. And I'm like, I kind of wanted her sacrifice to actually be a sacrifice where she stays a dragon. I understand why they didn't do that, because if they want to do a sequel to this game, the game is called Legend of Zelda. So
it's true,
I guess. And also it's like a kid's game.
Right.
So
although it could make a fantastic sequel, like kind of like the search for Spock kind of thing. Like the next the next one could be like how they're trying to reverse the spell, even though it's not supposed to work.
Maybe they're trying to save Zelda.
Yeah.
Also,
really fun.
When I saw that, my first thought was, the next game, I better be able to ride Zelda around nonstop.
Right?
Like, that was kind of one of my first thoughts. I was like, does this mean in the next game I get to ride dragons all the time? Like, I hope so.
I was really excited in the last battle when Ganon turns into a dragon, and I was like, oh, do I get to ride Zelda? Do I get to ride Zelda? And spoiler, you do.
You do.
It's great.
Well, now I might have to keep playing ahead and stop doing shrines.
The thing is, though, I knew this would happen from Breath of the Wild, but I kind of forgot. I was like my spouse and I played this game together, and we tend to like pass off the controller. And this is one of those games where it's not a couch co-op, but we treat it like a couch co-op, where it's like I play for a bit and then he plays for a bit, and we're both just like watching each other play.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, let's just like do the final battle. Like, let's get that out of the way, because I bet you that'll like unlock stuff. And then it's just like end credits, and I was like, no, what did I do? Yeah, I was like, too soon. But
so, if this is a writing podcast, so we're trying to take some inspiration for writers. I don't know. Yeah, if this was a novel, I think I would have left Zelda dead.
I would have too.
I guess it might depend if it was a middle grade novel. Even if it was a middle grade novel, I think I still might have.
Yeah. Because
what do you
have tough stories in middle grade too. I think that's something people often forget, right? Is that kids are so much smarter than we give them credit for. Like, consistently much smarter than we give them credit for. And I think they would be able to look at a story like that and take meaning from it and find value in it without it being like, and then it's a happy ending and she's no longer a dragon.
So I think one thing you really do have to take into consideration with that, even from a writing standpoint, is the IP. So there are tropes. This is the 20th. This would be the 20th book.
Yep.
There are tropes. There are expectations from readers, and so you have to make sure that you're walking that line where you are, giving the readers something new, something fresh, something exciting, but you're also not messing with like the foundational elements.
Yes,
that they have
what
come
people
to
keep
expect.
coming back for.
Yeah.
Yes. And if if you are coming into this with a certain level of expectation, I mean, that is the quickest way to really piss off your fans.
It's true.
Yeah.
Same thing with Link getting his arm healed. I was like, as someone who always wants disability in their stories, I was like, I wouldn't have done that, but I understand why Zelda did, because that's just...
Because we also have to think, like, they kind of need to be able to have a blank slate for the next installment, right?
Yeah.
So.
Right.
Yeah, can't have Link without an arm.
And I think it is also a bit of, service to the long-term fans of, keeping that continuity of how previous stories were handled. And so I do think it is, I think it's a decision that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Even though I completely agree with your points about it. Like, if it were a book, like especially a standalone.
Yeah.
Or like the first book in a series that was just starting now, I totally agree with you. I think it would be a much more modern, like contemporary kind of take on how stories are written now, as opposed to 20 stories ago.
Yeah. Or even
the 1980s.
If it was a first novel, to have Link mute would be really interesting. Like, because he sort of is, but he does talk to people. You just can't hear what it is, because you're supposed to insert yourself into his character when you're playing the game, right?
Yeah. I also think it would be so interesting to write a novel with the main character not having dialogue, even if it's not that they're mute, even if it's like main character Bob explained what was happening with Princess Z. And then have the person responding. Like, that would be super interesting. I don't know if I could get behind it for a whole book, but like I'd be so curious to see
maybe a short story. Out. That would be such a challenge to write.
Right.
Well, and especially because we have an omniscient narrator in this. Yes. We're seeing this from like an omniscient point of view. We are not seeing this through Link's eyes. So we're not aware of what he's thinking, or any of his internal reactions. So I think that would be really difficult, I think, to pull off and have a character that you feel really invested in a book.
Yeah, because that's one of
not to say that it couldn't happen. Because I'm sure it could, but yeah.
I mean, that's one of the advantages of books over other forms of media, is you get the interiority and you get to be in their head. I guess depending on the narrating style.
Right.
One other thing I love about Zelda is the puzzles. And I also love puzzles and riddles in books. But sometimes they're hard to do. So is there any inspiration we can glean from how Tears of the Kingdom did puzzles for writers?
I do like that there were multiple ways to answer one puzzle. I thought that was interesting. And I also like that, and this is also difficult because in a video game, when you're like, it's a tactile experience, right? Like, you are, in a sense, physically trying to solve this puzzle.
Yeah.
Versus if I'm reading a novel and there is like a riddle or a puzzle, I'm thinking of my current example is the A Court of Thorns and Roses series by Sarah J. Maas. In the first book, there's like a riddle. And I'm like, the answer's love. Like, I just knew it immediately. And the entire time it's like, but I just can't solve this riddle. I'm like, it's love. It's like, use your brain kind of thing. Like, I just found myself like frustrated by the riddle because I was like, but also I was looking at it not from the perspective of the character. I'm looking at it from the perspective of a writer, where I'm like, thematically, the best answer would be right. Like, that plays with the story. So I know that I have to take a step back and pretend that I'm like a 19-year-old kid who doesn't write stuff and is trying to sort out this riddle, instead of like a 30-year-old person who writes and edits stuff. It's like, thematically, publishing wise kind of thing. I
think you need to throw in tension in other ways, so it's not just what's the answer to this riddle. So like the obvious example I'm thinking of is Gollum and Bilbo in The Hobbit, where it's not just what's the answer, it's you will die if you don't get the answer and you need to get out of here, and all sorts of other sources of tension.
Giving it a sense of urgency, having that kind of ticking clock of, I don't know if either of you watch game shows. I used to be a huge game show junkie and still watch some of them now. But on any kind of like trivia or quiz type show, you know, there's always part of the fun of watching them is like, you know, the answers and you're going like, you know, this is the answer. Why don't you know? But you don't take into consideration how difficult it is to think that way under pressure. So like, I remember when Who Wants to Be a Millionaire was on, which I did not really watch, but I had seen parts of it. And there was like this dramatic lighting and like the music was super dramatic. And I was like, just that lighting and that music would be enough to make me like totally freeze.
Like, what's your middle name? And I'd be like,
Okay, and I'm already kind of like that whenever anybody's like, you know, could you, you know, give me a book recommendation or like, what's your favorite movie? I'm like, I've never seen a movie before.
What are you talking about?
What is a movie I've ever done?
What's a movie?
I think something I really like about the puzzles in this game is that they're tied directly to a lot of them anyway, are tied directly to the new elements that they've introduced for the world building. So like a lot of them are about building things using Ultra Hand. Specifically, there's a lot of stuff regarding the like different vehicles and constructs. There are multiple different ways that you use the new mineral that they give you, and kind of all of, you know, the stuff that is involved with all of that. You know, and then when you get into like you're going into the chasms and kind of doing all of that part, you know, you're really dealing with the gloom a lot through the whole thing, and that adds this other this other layer of tension, really. But I really like how much all of that is tied to, you know, it's not just logic puzzles. It's you know, logic, and it's also related to these specific elements that they've introduced in this game, which I think from a writing standpoint, I love that idea. It's something, you know, it's very much like Chekhov's gun kind of concept. Like, you know, when you introduce something into a story, you want to make sure that it is relevant to the story and not just something you're throwing in there to be pretty. And so while I think that Ultra Hand definitely could have had a better name, you know, well, I think if that were a book I was editing, I would be like, you know, maybe you should give this a different name.
It works in a video game, but
it does. You know, but I think that it was a really cool thing to add, and it was also, I think they've done a lot of really interesting things with how you make. How that plays into all of the puzzles and all of that stuff.
Weirdly enough, the shrines remind me of Karate Kid. Like, you know, and Mr. Miyagi is like, wax on, wax off. And he thinks that he's just getting him to clean his car, but he's teaching him to like block punches. Right. Kind of thing. That's what I felt like when I was with the shrines, where I'm like, maybe it's just a silly little puzzle, but maybe it's also a bigger lesson, like a bigger part of the story, and like directing you somewhere, kind of thing.
Well, and then also when you do that, then you take those same skills. I mean, you're totally right, because then you take those same skills and you have to use those in the main quest lines.
Yes,
you know?
Exactly.
Yeah. And yeah, so that's something that I do often tell writers who have puzzles or, you know, riddles or anything like that in their quest storylines, is that you want to make sure that the things that they're learning along the way show up again in that final, you know, either in the climax or, you know, getting them as they're storming the castle, or, you know, somewhere toward the end in Act 3, we want to see those points come up again.
We kind of
so
want
that we're really
payoff.
kind of cementing it. Exactly. Yeah, and so I think that's, you know, something really cool that happens in this as well.
Like Christiana mentioned earlier, I really liked how you could solve puzzles in ways that perhaps the game developers weren't expecting you to, or they may have one solution in mind when they make a puzzle, but then there are other ways that you can solve it, which I sometimes did by accident. Like, oh, that maybe shouldn't have worked, but it did, and that's fun.
I also
So I like
love that in stories, like in books and stuff like that, when a character is presented with a challenge that is obviously solved in a certain way or presented in a certain way, and then they find the workaround. Ooh, I love a little sneaky moment like that.
Or even it's like,
so
it's the social expectation to do this, and you do something else.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another funny thing, my husband yesterday when I was playing, he's like, so does the game ever explain where this green goo comes from that you use to attach things together? And I'm like, I don't think so. I think it's just
just technology.
Yeah,
you
don't question it. It doesn't matter. That's not what Zelda is concerned with.
But that's another good world building piece, like advice, where it's like people aren't going to question it that hard.
Some people will,
some people will, but you know what I mean. Like if in the worlds you've built, you can use random green goo to build stuff. Most people are going to be like, okay, this is a world where you can use random green goo to build stuff. Like,
choosing which world building aspects to explain in your novel and which to that's just the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like to think about like how a toaster works in our world. I don't know how it works. I wouldn't be able to explain it to you, but I don't really care. I go about my life making toast anyway. So
you really have to question like how important really is that to the story,
exactly,
to the character, and to the reader. Like if it's a story about toast, that might be really important.
Very important.
Exactly. Yes.
But we might need to know those mechanics.
But if it's just what your character has for breakfast, you probably don't need to go into the mechanics of how the toaster works. So, and in your story, your toaster may be some sort of technology or magic or whatever your world building is.
Yeah.
Well, and I kind of love that you said that about like that how that works, because I think that's often how I encourage writers to think about the ways they explain things in world building is, what is your reader bringing into this already? Both from just general knowledge, from tropes that are standard in your age category and genre. What are they bringing into this from like just this sort of general like cultural consciousness? So if you're coming into this with the idea of this is sort of a standard trope, or like you said, I know what a toaster is, you can use that as the starting point. So you don't have to explain all the mechanics of whatever. You can just sort of say it's like a toaster that works on magic,
Yeah.
Or, use that concept of knowing your reader understands what a toaster is, to give them that information so they have enough of an understanding that you don't have to go into all of the details. So I think that's a really great way to look at it.
It's also helpful to think about what your character knows and doesn't know, and what they care about and don't care about. Because if this is an everyday thing for your character, particularly if you're narrating from inside their head, they're probably not going to think about, oh yeah, the toaster heats up with X type of Y or whatever. I don't know how toasters work.
Well, and like we said before, we don't get all of Link's interiority, but I'm thinking Link doesn't really care about the green goo.
No.
He's like, as long as it holds together, that's all that really matters to me.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think another great example of kind of like not necessarily questioning mechanics, and part of this is also coming from the outside perspective, is the ascend ability. So the ascend ability originally started with so I read this in an article. I can't remember it offhand, but it was a reputable source, so I trust it. But the ascend ability was originally for developers as they were kind of exploring caves and dungeons and things like that. Instead of having to go all the way back to the start, they could just ascend out of it. And then they thought people would actually probably really appreciate this.
Yeah,
I love
and
it.
I was like,
I really love it.
It's so handy and it's so cool. But I also think of it from like a writerly perspective, where it's like, if your character is like, there's a big plot point, and then it's like, I need to travel to the next city to continue this plot point. Use the ascend ability. Like, you don't have to explain 2 weeks of camping and traveling where nothing happens.
Right.
just ascend into the next scene. Like, I was thinking of it from that perspective too, right? Where it's like, sometimes it's easy for you as the writer to cut stuff out and just ascend out of a situation. And sometimes you're doing it because it's the easy way out, not the right way out. But a lot of the
Right.
times it's also the right way out for the readers too, right? Like, they don't need to.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. As much as I like just kind of running around the world and seeing what's out there and finding all the cool little nooks and crannies and, you know, the hidden ore deposits and things like that.
Yeah.
As much as I love doing that part, there are times when I'm just like, I'm in quest mode and I just want to do the thing.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm definitely like that as a reader too. Like, it's fun sometimes to get to explore. And sometimes I just don't want to read all of the details of their journey or whatever. And I think it's really important to understand the pacing of your story overall and sort of where you are in that overall pacing. What does this scene need to be in terms of pacing?
Yeah.
Do we need that moment to breathe and, you know, look at all the pretty things and find all of the cool little nooks and crannies? Or is this a moment we just need to ascend? I love that analogy.
Me too. Side note, I kept forgetting about the ascend ability when solving puzzles, and I would be like so frustrated and stuck, and my husband would come in and be like, why don't you just ascend up there? And I'm like,
there's a conveniently placed ledge.
I forgot about that. Remembering the tools in your toolbox is useful.
Yeah. So for writers, one of the things that I recommend, especially when you have like secondary worlds or, you know, a lot of really intricate world building that has stuff that we don't have in our real world, is tracking all of that. So, you know, as you're writing, whether you are a pantser or a plotter, as you're writing, just, you know, making notes of yourself, like, this is this thing that I used in this chapter kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that you can keep track of it and make sure that you are bringing it up again later. And, you know, maybe not in your first draft, but, you know, as you go through the revision process, making sure that you're coming back to those things.
I love doing reverse outlines when I'm done the first draft, and then I make like a spreadsheet where I track all those things. I find it helpful.
Those are so beautiful. I love them so much.
Me too. And as a writer and an editor.
Yeah, and it's helpful for the reader too, right? Because like nothing is more frustrating than having this like, you know, silver bullet, so to speak, presented early in the story, and then it's never ever used again.
Yeah,
it's just like, why didn't you just do this thing that you already showed to us that you can do, kind of thing.
Sometimes I will see writers make something seem really significant, like a character or an item in an early chapter, and then it just never comes up again.
Yes.
And you're just like, why did I spend 5 pages caring about this guy? Then I never hear about that again. Yeah.
And I think the reason that you might be tempted to do that is because you want to give all the little details and make it seem like a real immersive world. But when you point out something really specific, like giving a character a name and making them talk with the main character, sometimes that often signals to readers, this is a significant person. This is someone I need to pay attention to. And then if later they're not, that means maybe you can cut that character out or that item out.
The inverse of that is true too, though. When you see a moment early on and you don't think it's important, and then you find out later that it is, like, I get chills.
I love that. I love that so much. Yeah. Yes. That is amazing. Okay, we could talk on and on for a long time, and I want to, but we should probably move. I do want to briefly mention I loved the addition of the Sky Islands and the depths. As far as world building goes, it was really neat to be able to explore the 3 different environments.
And that's I think the smart way of expanding an existing world, right?
Yes.
We know the Breath of the Wild, Hyrule. This was a really clever way to be like, it's the same Hyrule, but more kind of thing.
Well, and the sky area, like the floating islands and everything, felt very much like Skyward Sword, which was a nice little nudge.
Yeah.
And then all of the stuff in the depths reminded me of there's like a whole side plot, quest line in Skyrim that takes place in like very dark places like that as well. Which I love that portion of Skyrim. So I thought that like harkened back to that for me, and I liked that a lot.
With the Falmore.
Yes.
I really liked that the depths mirrored the above world. When I figured out that like the light sources were the same places as shrines in the above world, I was like, that's so cool. Like, what a clever kind of bit of world building, because the fact that it reflects the upper world is interesting, like intriguing and mysterious. And then the fact that it also helps in gameplay, that you can find shrines.
Well, and again, there are places in the depths where you have to use Ascend, where you have to use Ultra Hand, you know, all of those things that you're using in the main quest and in the shrines and all those puzzles, you're also having to use in the depths, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah. Also, as a horror fanatic, there were some genuinely creepy moments in the depths.
There
like
really
the first time I went down there, I was thoroughly too weak to be in the depths.
Yeah.
I just like dived my way down there, and I was like, I'll figure it out. And I was like, this is horrifying. I'll come back.
When my heart broke down there, I was like, oh, my heart's gone.
What?
Is it gone forever? I'm never coming back down here. This is terrifying.
This is too much.
Yeah.
This game is for children.
Right. Is it though? Yeah. So good. Okay, Jeni, normally I do proprietor's pick, but today you have picked our novel that we're going to recommend to listeners, and I'm so excited to hear what you've selected.
Okay, so I thought about this a lot. Probably too much. I overthought about it. Okay, so what I have come up with is In the Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune, which was just released earlier this year, and it is a sort of post-apocalyptic retelling of Pinocchio with AI. But it also has TJ Klune's sort of characteristic cozy vibes. Yeah, so there's a lot of similarities to it in terms of, like, there's a real sense of danger through a lot of the story. There is a quest involved. But there is still this, like, sense of coziness that I always feel in the Legend of Zelda games as well. And there's also the element of there being this sort of past civilization and the tech from it being applicable to the current storyline, as well as memory plays a really big part in the book as well. So sort of uncovering layers of memory and kind of all of that. So once I really kind of thought about it, I was like, wow, there really are a lot of similarities here that I would not have considered unless someone had specifically asked me about it. So
that sounds amazing. I actually really like that description of Zelda too, like adventure and darkness, but also cozy. That really describes how I feel about it. So I love that. Thank you. But with that, it is time for last call, where we give one last piece of advice to writers who are world building perhaps a story similar to Tears of the Kingdom. So, Christiana, what do you want to leave in our listeners' mind?
I think my kind of question or prompt would be, does the story need to be linear? Is it absolutely necessary that it goes A, B, C, D? Or is it maybe more exciting to get one of the later tidbits first, which leads you to another, which leads you to a sooner one, which leads you to the last one, which leads you to the middle one that finally makes the final picture kind of thing? It's no secret to listener of the podcast. I adore weird stories. I love weird things. And so it's no surprise that I kind of like non-linear stories. But yeah, ask yourself, like, is there a reason? Are you just doing it linear because that's kind of what you expect from stories? Or even if you write it in a linear way, are you going to edit it and chop it up and present it in a different one? What serves your story best?
I like that. Jenny, do you have any words of wisdom for our listeners?
So I think as someone who had such a deep love for Breath of the Wild, like I said, coming into this, I feel like I had high expectations. This is sort of the equivalent of like book 2 in this series. And so I think there are a lot of lessons to be taken from Tears of the Kingdom for writers of series, where you're using the same world, the same characters, similar conflicts, like a continuation of previous conflicts, but that you have to find ways of making all of that new for each book. So it's really challenging, I think, to decide, what am I going to put in for people who loved the previous book? And then where am I going to add something new so that I'm keeping all of this fresh for readers?
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
I will just reiterate that when you want to immerse someone in a world, that all the little details help make it feel real. So all the people that we meet in Hyrule and the quests and the creatures. We didn't get into the creatures. I love all the one of my favorite things is to take all the pictures and fill in your Hyrule compendium. I did not finish that this round. There's so much.
Except for the gloom hands. The gloom hands can leave me alone, please.
I might one day actually have nightmares about them. It's terrifying.
There are a lot.
I fought those once, and then I'm like, I don't know how to beat these things.
It
I will say,
made my heart rate go up. Like I was like running.
Yeah.
I was like, "What is this?" Like the first time I encountered them, I was like, "No, oh my god, what is happening? No!" And just like running as fast as I can. I was horrified.
I will say, I found that bombs are just the cheat code for defeating everything.
That's true. That's true.
Anyway, I lost my train of thought. Include all those little details, but also make sure everything is relevant to your story, is what I was getting at. Yes. Let's end with that. This is now closing time. Thank you so much for joining us at the tavern. Thank you, Jenny, for guesting. It was a delight to chat with you and have you here. Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me.
So we hope to serve you here again. Now, scram!
Get out of here.